So welcome everyone to another episode of Interviewing the Greats. Today we have a really special guest, Dippo, in the studio, a much needed conversation around how we're bringing inclusivity and kind of those that are sometimes neglected into the conversation. So I think it's needed, man. Take the mic. Who are you?
My name's Christian, Christian Dippolito. Everyone calls me Dippo. Thanks for the introduction, Alex. What do I do? Well, I guess I am a social entrepreneur. In many ways, you can call me that, because for the last 6 years in particular, I've devoted my life to helping young people through the creation of opportunity. Now, it began with a lot of work at Steel Warriors, an organisation that I pretty much ran. A lot of community events, a lot of intervention, which is a harsh word really. And so what I now focus on is not just physical and mental development, but also upskilling through employability. And I try and do that in the creative space. So
something that's always stood out to me. Grant Davies introduced me to you about a year and a half ago, before you did the first charity ball, a year or so, 18 months ago. And something that always stood out to me that resonated hard was the fact that you aren't just talking about change. I think a lot of people, they throw a slogan on a website, they put a picture on Instagram, and it's very little actually going on. What has always stood out to me is you're actually on the front line, you're actually doing the work that you're talking about doing. Before we talk about really what Steel Warriors was and now what the Spartan Project is, like, how did you get into this line of work? Because what you do must have been either from a deep love or a huge frustration for change. So who are you 5-10 years ago, before the philanthropy, before the charity, before the work came in? Who is Christian?
I used to work in advertising, media more specifically. And I had many different jobs in that industry, from publishing. I used to work for the Financial Times newspaper, publishing, viral video content, software, esports, production, media sales, media strategy. It's a big bag of experience over the course of maybe a 15-year period. The truth is that I never really chose that industry. It kind of chose me. And after 15 years of work and devotion and dedication, I realised that I wasn't really fulfilled. And I didn't really know what I truly wanted to do. But before I even started my career in media, I was making very low budget documentaries. I've always been interested in storytelling. And my background is a little bit varied too. I was born in Naples. I left there when I was 12. I came to London with my mum. And my mum doesn't have any qualifications, and so single parent upbringing. We don't come from privilege, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And if you put everything together, the fascination with storytelling, the move from Naples to London, spent a lot of time with, I suppose, the BMX community, skating communities, a lot of urban movements. When I lost myself, I kind of realised that the best way to find myself was probably to go back to the very beginning and try and understand a bit more about, the things that really did interest me before I got into work. And one fateful day, I would be walking through the park and I actually stumbled into Steel Warriors. The gym had only been up for a few months. This is the one in Ruskin Park in Denmark Hill in South London. And at the time, at least, they didn't really have much of an operation, given that COVID had reduced it down to virtually nothing. And so I took it upon myself just to run the organisation. No one hired me. I kind of hired myself and, took over Instagram and just started really documenting what was going on at the gym. And to your point, you see, no matter what you do, you have to be involved. You have to have an appreciation for what's happening on the ground floor if you are aiming to perhaps, create some sort of strategic direction for said organisation to grow. And so that's exactly what I did. I found myself going back day after day, training, meeting more people. The sport in question, if you can call it that, is calisthenics. I actually started training calisthenics as a coping mechanism for personal trauma. I went through some pretty bad times in my adult life, a lot of family pressures and a lot of really just difficult times emotionally and mentally. And so I used calisthenics as a way to really engage my mind on a positive and a more structured way of thinking. And so it didn't take too long for me to realise, okay, well, I have now not just the tools, but also the ability to help shape a community that has kind of lost its way a little bit. And that's how it began. And I never look back. And this is in 2020.
So it's 5 years, 6 years almost. Well, no, you're 5 years in the making of getting you to this point. So let's talk about the charity work, because something, as I said, that stood out to me is the fact you're on the front line. And I met you where I really saw your work come to light. Insert B-roll from Brixton Street Gym that weekend. What was it? A couple of weeks ago. That's when I really saw it come to light, the power of what you're bringing together. Regardless of your background, regardless of what you are, you belong somewhere. Talk to us a little bit about. What was it about Still Warriors? In fact, for those that don't know, what is Still Warriors?
Sure.
In its form when you found it, and its form when you left it, because I believe you stepped away right now, right? Yes. Is that right? So what was it when you found it? What is it? What did you get it to? Because I think that journey is breathtaking, what you achieved or what you were a part of achieving. Talk to us about that, and then then we'll get into what Brixton Street Gym was, and then what Spartan Project now is.
Okay, so Still Warriors is many things. It is a truly wonderful metaphor, underpinned by this idea of transformation. I mean, what they do is really quite unique in that they melt confiscated weapons and they turn them into outdoor street gyms, which are free to use. And they're strategically placed in locations that are very accessible. The whole point is to encourage, participation and serve as an entry point into fitness. 5 gyms around London, one in Ruskin Park, which is the one that I stumbled into. One in Finsbury Park, one in Langdon Park, one now in Stratford, which opened late last year, and one inside Brixton Prison. And the point is to teach for free calisthenics classes that ultimately help create community. And it's a wonderful model, and it works extremely well for giving people something to do. And that's the point. Everybody, myself included, is looking for something to do. However, we live in times where that isn't as straightforward a problem to solve, because the only places where one isn't expected to spend any money are parks and libraries. So in other words, there isn't that much to do, you see? Whether you're roller skating and getting thrown out of a car park, or whether you're looking for a very cost-effective gym membership, the truth is that there aren't that many solutions for young, underprivileged people. The expectation is that you have to part with money. Particularly gym memberships, they're not cheap anymore. They're expensive. And so if we get to a point where even fitness is treated as a privilege, then we're kind of entering very dangerous territory, because we spend a lot of time talking about the negatives. We spend a lot of time talking about things that people shouldn't do. We spend a lot of time talking about antisocial behaviour and youth violence, but we don't spend enough time talking about, well, what are the proposed solutions then? And so Still Warriors serves as an answer to that problem. But gyms will only ever be as good as the people who frequent them. And so the creation of events and moments like what you saw at Brixton Street Gym, which are specifically designed to bring together people who perhaps involve themselves with other disciplines, not limited to calisthenics, well, that's really important. Because, if a young person in particular just isn't aware of what's possible, of what's out there, of what's available, then the first thing that we should really think about doing is solving this problem of awareness. And so what better way to do that than by bringing everyone together and hosting an event that, in our case, celebrates movement culture, not necessarily just one particular sport.
And this is the thing that stood out to me, by the way. That exact point right there of celebrating everyone as a whole, right? The thing I got thinking about is you watch the ambition, the drive, the determination of the young men and women that are at, say, Brixton Street Gym, for example. What I think about a lot is if you gave them the opportunity to have the same access to education, if you gave them the opportunity to have the same access to jobs, how could they take the things that they've achieved on, say, a barbell or a pull-up bar or a dip bar, and what they can do with calisthenics? Am I saying that right? Calisthenics?
Yep.
What they can achieve there, could you then redirect that same energy
100%.
into redefining their narrative of where they started in life? Because not many people, and this is probably the first time I'll ever announce this, certainly online, some of my childhood was spent outside of the family home, and where education was taken away for a period of time and into certain housing. I saw firsthand what it's like to the road that could have gone down. And I was very fortunate that I still had a place at school. I still had a loving home, right? I can now empathize with the fact that if these kids start out life there, not a secure home, not access to education, not access to a meal a day at a minimum, it can mess you up. I can see why
100%.
people struggle. Where do you see, like, what's the need that needs to start changing from a perspective? Because we can all sit in our ivory tower and talk about change. What do you see on the ground right now that actually needs to start changing?
So first things first, I mean, at a very top level, like, everybody needs a little bit of encouragement. And for many young people, that really is the start point. I mean,
just a mentor to be, by the way, you can do this. Like,
yeah. So encouragement is key. Some kids, some young people that I've worked with are literally prisoners of their own estates. And just to sort of, like, you know, make it clear, you know, sure, I spend time working, you know, in the community, with communities, but I also spend a lot of time working with HMPPS.
What's that?
And Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Services.
Oh, yeah.
And so one way or the other, you know, we're dealing with people who, because of the availability bias, form their realities really around what they know. And it can't really go much further. And so a starting point is not just encouragement, therefore, then we need to illuminate paths that for many will just simply be unknown. So, you know, enter the Spartan Project. You see, what we're trying to do really is not just encourage access to alternative fitness communities, calisthenics being one, breakdancing, roller skating, capoeira, street art, you name it.
What's capoeira? What's that?
It's the Brazilian sort of martial art combat dance.
Very cool.
Eddie from Tekken probably best personifies. What capoeira is all about. But, you know, again, movement culture. Movement culture is really a celebration of a number of different disciplines. And so we, thanks to a very deep set of relationships and a very strong network, we're in a position to spotlight and highlight those communities and the individuals that are doing great work in those respective fields. So encouragement, illuminating paths. But then if we're really going to try and go that extra step, then we need to talk about employability. We need to talk about, you know, upskilling. We need to talk about, you know, operating in the real world. The real world means that, you know, it doesn't matter how old you are, really, there's going to be a point in your life when you realize you need to start making money. And it just so happens that the creative world, well, you don't need a degree to be creative is what I'm trying to say. And so a great area of focus for the Spartan Project, which is the you know, I suppose the latest project that me and a couple of my colleagues are working on. The whole point of that is to really break down those barriers of entry into what still feels like quite a privileged industry.
As in the creative industry or as in education?
The creative industry. I mean, if you ask, I mean, I suppose another key point for us is really we're trying to present a contemporary solution to a complex issue. You know, the charitable sector and the public sector in general, from my point of view, it feels like it needs a good shake. And many young people today, they're not so interested in, you know, getting a placement or an internship at a Deloitte or a KPMG. They want real life skills that serve their interests and perhaps get them closer to the industries that they want to work in. And what are those? Well, the usual subjects that come up are sound engineering, production, design, branding, content, editing, videography, photography. So those are the areas of interest. And because you don't need a degree to be creative, a big part of the Spartan Project's focus is to break down the barriers of entry with highly accredited, if not award-winning entities and institutions in that space.
And one thing that you said to me that stood out quite a lot when I first ever met you on that beautiful Brixton day with an almond croissant was the frustration and annoyance you had around kind of like how little's actually been done. So if I'm someone watching this, it resonates. What can the average individual actually do to support you? Because there is that saying of, well, what can I actually do about it?
Yeah.
But like someone's listening to this, they've been inspired, they're curious to get involved. How does the average individual that doesn't have $100,000 to donate to support something like, how do they get involved to start making a change or supporting?
Sure. I mean, I feel just to, before I even answer that question, I think, you know, a big point of frustration, for me really lies in the fact that we seem to talk a lot, right? There's a lot of discussion.
There's some irony in that, considering we're on a podcast, isn't there?
But guess where I'm going immediately after? You know, I'm going straight. I mean, I am hands-on. And so the point I'm trying to make is that there's too much time is spent talking. If people want to help, they really need to get their hands dirty, really, one way or the other. And one way that in which people can do that with us is just by coming to our events. If you live in London, just turn up. They're free. And you can see firsthand, you know, how they unfold, the value that they add and the impact that they have as well, particularly on young people, because everybody leaves happy. Obviously, donations are always welcome. But I feel like a big area of focus for us is really collaborations. You know, as an organisation that has limited resources, we're not trying to do everything by ourselves. It makes sense to collaborate, ideally in a synergistic way, whereby we lean on partners that perhaps share the same values, and together we can achieve something that in isolation we probably couldn't. So donations and collaborations is really the summarised way of how anyone can work with the Spartan Project.
And the Spartan Project, what's the mission that you're aiming for now? So like you had the kind of like the foundation of 15 years in advertising and marketing, massive network around you that you use some of that with Steel Warriors.
Yep.
That then kind of created a transition into the birth of Spartan Project. What does the next couple of years look like for you? What's the ambition and what's the change?
The ambition is, I'm glad you asked that, because really we are trying to create opportunities.
Clear
in
and
simple
simple
terms,
yeah.
If someone asks, well, what do you do? What's the point of this? Well, we're trying to create opportunities for young people. How do you do it? Well, we do it through creative enterprise, and that's what I just discussed.
Talked about, yeah.
The workshops with agencies and whatnot. And we do it through alternative fitness. And what does that mean? Well, it means we're spotlighting various communities that do some really amazing stuff. Breakdancing, parkour, bike life, skating, roller skating, BMXing, kung fu, anything that celebrates movement. And so for many young people, they just don't know where to start. They don't know. They might have thought about breakdancing, but don't know really, you know, who to speak to or where to begin or who to do it with.
The thing is, Matt, this has got almost two audiences. This has got the parent that doesn't know how to support or stimulate the child. And the reason I say that, the reason I say this is I was reading this thing the other day. I can't quote it, so I can't remember. I just remember the fact that between the age of birth and 14, the parent is responsible for about 85% of how the child will grow up. After 14, 85% of how that child will grow up to be is their environment, because of how much of an influence their schooling, their friends, their opportunities are. So there's almost two audiences for the Spartan Project. There's the parent that realizes, I need to get my boy, my girl into something that they can feel a part of, because that will influence them, right? And I either don't do anything and they go to a street corner, or they go down the park and I'm out of control, or I speak to you guys and gals, what is local to me that I can send my son to once a week, or my daughter to. But then there's the other side of it. If it's a young kid that doesn't feel like they belong or doesn't have the creative outlet, how does someone get involved then? Because like, what's the easiest way to...
Great question. I mean, again, just to sort of summarize that point, which is incredibly valid, you're right, because what we do and what we've been very successful at doing is creating a sense of belonging for people, one way or the other.
Big.
And that is really important, particularly when working with HMPPS, because you have a situation now where mostly young men, you know, are being resettled, but without really having much clarity around what it is they should be doing. And, you know, when you're trying to discourage someone from participating in gang life, well, then you've got to replace that. You've got to replace that sense of belonging, that sense of fraternity, with someone or someone else or other people or a community. And so this highlights the importance of community. Because, you know, even like, you know, if we're dealing with an hour session or a day-long event, well, what happens outside of that? Well, that's when the community comes in, because, you know, we can't be there 24 hours a day. No one can. But the community, which lives both online and in the physical realm, does more heavy lifting than I think people actually give the community credit for. So creating opportunities that allow for community to forge is really manifested through the events that we put on. And then once you've done that, once you've achieved a sense of belonging or created it, and that provides a reassuring environment for a young person to be in, well then what we're going to do about the creation of opportunity? Well then that's when the creative enterprise element of what we do comes into play, because but I just got to jump in here because this is the bit that I think makes it all sink in.
you suddenly bring the community element in and the FOMO of like, well, everybody else is doing it. So it's either good behavior or it's bad behavior. They're going to be a part of something, right? It's either the good stuff where they're training, they're getting their mind right and they're around positive influence, or they're in the park, they're doing whatever. But the piece that brings it all together is like, let me now show you a way out. So your current doesn't have to be your future. And that's the thing I think is the crucial answer, which I love about what you guys and gals are doing.
It is, because we're kind of showing what's possible in, as I mentioned already, an industry that doesn't require, technically degrees or qualifications that, for many are just inaccessible. So the other element to consider as well is that by being part of these aforementioned communities, be it calisthenics or breakdancing or whatever, just by virtue of involvement, you need to demonstrate those values, which involve discipline, consistency, delayed gratification, because without those, you're not really going to get far in these respective communities, because they kind of expect that of you. If you want to do calisthenics, for example, you've got to turn up. That's a good starting point, isn't it? And then the community motivates you to keep coming, you see. And so through that community involvement, you begin to really develop those values and virtues that are so sought after in the professional community. You see?
Yeah.
So
and you start from ground up, and
exactly.
you see it firsthand, which a degree won't give you, and you get access into it.
And consider also that a lot of these sports, not only do they not require any specialist equipment, breakdancing, calisthenics, what do you need? You need the floor and gravity, right?
Yeah.
So there's no real expenses or expenditure involved. Not only do you need minimal equipment, right? You also need to, whether you like it or not, sort of become a content creator. You see, because the social media content economy is what connects these communities. And so when you begin your respective journey, or when someone begins their respective journey in one of the aforementioned communities, they kind of silently sign a contract with becoming a content creator, because that's how you monitor your own progress, you see. And so what I notice is that those skills and those, that expertise rather, around videography, photography, editing, software platforms that allow for the aforementioned to happen, that knowledge is really much sought after. So the industry, the creative industry in particular, in many ways you can argue is kind of gatekeeping that knowledge, when all we really need to do is find the way of sharing it equitably. And so that's what the Spartan Project is trying to do. It's trying to break down barriers initially through workshops, but eventually, perhaps through internships, apprenticeships, and maybe even full-time employment.
Man, we're after a very similar mission, because what you're trying to do in the creative industry, I see. So I'm in the technology space for sales, right? Sales training within the tech space. The biggest issue most tech business owners have at the moment is finding reliable, hungry talent that they can afford. Because even if you've got junior developers now, they're on 80 to 100 grand a year, right? For a junior level person. What I'm not saying exploitation, but I'm certainly saying if I'm a junior level person without the degree, without the development background, where I see the opportunity is if somebody trained a group of younger people to a certain standard, they vetted them, they kind of like helped them with understanding the industry, then gave them real-time access to jobs, their clients. That's how I suddenly see you bridge a big gap for a lot of businesses that can't afford these salaries and therefore suffer as a business for it. Whereas the young people we're talking about, they have all the skills needed. They just don't have the accessibility.
Well, we say, almost every day at some point this comes up. We talk about talent being everywhere, but opportunity not. You see, and I think that's an objective reality that
But what you've built with Spartan Project, you've already probably kind of like seen this. You're de-risking it for the end user. Because basically what you're saying is we've vetted them, they've come to our workshops, they've done this training, I can put my word against them. And that's why I said you've got two audiences. Well, you've got three audiences. You've got the end user, the employers that are going to benefit from these young kids that you're supporting, you're growing, you're giving them confidence. They're getting the skills, everything else. But also you're showing young people, well, this is how you have accessibility to it. You get to decide your future.
And that's without even mentioning the referrals that we've started to really take on now. Because again, a lot of our work, all of our work has social impact really baked within it. And so you can begin to see how by proving that this model works, by proving the concept, you can see how it won't take too much effort to overlay it successfully onto HMPPS, because that's what this is about. It's about creating opportunities. It's about aiding resettlement. It's about giving hope. It's about breaking down barriers, and frankly, it's about doing some cool stuff in the process too.
And I like the fact that you, from a societal standpoint, the people that we would deem don't go near those people is like people that have offended, people that have been to prison. I like that you're going to speak to those people.
Definitely.
Because rehabilitation's a thing, right? It's it's giving them the opportunity. Hey, just because you have made a bad decision, we can look past that. We can give you a way of getting through that opportunity. It's mega. Christian, last question. Anything else you need to say, or anything else you'd like to just share about Spartan, about you, about what you're working towards?
We've got some really cool events coming up that, if for anyone interested in seeing like how we get busy, come down. We've got one on the 27th for Brixton Street Gym. We have a creative workshop for young people in the first week of July with Offcut Productions. We have an event in July, a breakdancing event in the Samsung flagship store in King's Cross. It's a ticketed event as well.
You've just put a time constraint on me having to edit this video now. I like it. Thanks for that. I'm off to Thailand next week. On the flight, I'm going to edit this video. I'm going to get this interview out sharp, man. But
well, I'll tell you what. We can do an alternative.
Link below.
But we can do an alternative ending right now where I don't.
No. Say it. It's cool. It's all going to go in. I want to share it all because it gives me a time constraint. Otherwise, it'll be 6 months and I won't do it.
Okay. So we have a number of events coming up that anyone can come and take a look at, join, get involved, see how we get busy. Breakdancing, street art, Brixton Street Gym end of the month, King's Cross start next month. We've got a couple of creative workshops. Offcut Productions is a good example. We're going to be doing something with Global Street Art very soon as well. Shout out to Lee Bofkin and the great work that he does. We need funding, and anyone who has any ideas as to how we can be more successful in that space, please get in touch. And apart from that, just give us a follow on social media. We've got some really cool content coming out, and hopefully, you'll see firsthand just the value of what we're doing, basically.
See, I'm going to let you say any final words if you got it, but I'm going to finish on this. This is a question to anybody watching, right? The question is this: are you becoming the person you needed? And Christian and I spoke about this on the first time we ever met. And we it's funny because we say this with all smiling, but I love the saying, you won't understand the violence it's taken to become this calm. We have both agreed, we're becoming the men and the role models that we needed. For anyone watching this that's got this far, thank you for watching, by the way. But also, think about the way and the person you've become, and what would it mean to someone to have you as a mentor, you as a guide, you as an influence to become a part of this journey. And that's why we're working on a way of how do I bring sales and marketing to these younger people for free as well, and then opportunities with where I'm trying to go. Anyone watching, it doesn't need to always be money. You could open a door or two.
100%.
Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be money. It's not money. Sometimes actually is a bit of a hindrance because what do I do with it?
Yeah.
And there's an obligation to maybe spend it. Whereas if you're sitting there thinking, well, actually, I could get involved because, and this has resonated, man, please.
100%.
Just reach out. One of us, I'll put you onto Christian straight away. Yeah.
I mean, perhaps in closing, really, no one really ever helped me. I'm lucky, but I've always been quite confident, very assertive. And I figured out a lot of stuff, by myself, for myself. But that has come at its own price. And I've not really necessarily found it easy. And now reflecting on my journey, understanding that I'm in a position to help, well, then, I'm very eager to do so because, I've learned a lot on my journey. And what's the point of gatekeeping knowledge?
I love it, man. Final question. I ask it to every guest. I've got to ask it. What's your favourite dessert?
Oh, my God.
Blindsided you.
You know what? You did, yeah. And my
my scripting doesn't know what to do with it.
No, I was going to say tiramisu, but that's so predictable.
You've fallen into the Italian trap, my brother.
Yeah, capito. Certo, il tiramisu, insomma, lo facciamo bene. Però
I'll get the translator for all of the... what did you just say?
I said tiramisu because we make it well, but...
Wait, hold on a second. This is a crucial question because I've gone to 6 Italian restaurants around London and been disappointed with all of them because they've started using cream in tiramisu and it's a disgrace. Would you make it? And do you use condensed milk? Do you use
No condensed milk.
No condensed milk.
I
Too
think
heavy.
I think a good place to get one if you really want to go.
Please.
Is Bocca di Lupo in Soho.
Do you own it? Is there a shameless plug here? Or is...
It's a good restaurant in Soho. That's if it's still around, mind you. I've not been for a few years, but good one there.
Good tiramisu there. Yeah. Thank you for watching. Hopefully this has been kind of helpful. Sorry it's gone off on a bit of a rant at the end about tiramisu, but I love it. Yeah, it's my favourite dessert. And God bless you, my man. Safe bike ride over to Battersea Park, and I'll see you on the next trip.
Thank you.
God bless. Thank you for watching.
Cheers,
see you all
guys.
soon. Thank you so much.